Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Mama and Christopher and 2 Acre. What's poppin'? What's up, bruh? This is Hanging with the Bears. I am Robear. And we got Westside hanging out tonight. What's up? Ascension, Skillet. There's Westside. What's up, man? Give it a second. Let a few people pile in. I'll grab you. Longbow Wood Shop. Welcome in, gentlemen. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. It's been a pretty interesting one for me. Just start over anyway. All right. Yo. What is good? Yeah, I think it is episode 341, and it's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we got Westside hanging out tonight. Patterson one day. Owen's live tonight was hilarious. Happy to be here. Did Owen do one recently? I've been kind of out of it. I've had a lot going on this weekend. I caught one earlier. Who we got tonight? We got Westside, the one and only Westside. All right. I think he's already in here. I'm going to go ahead and grab him. How's everybody doing? What's up, Zach? First time it worked.
Howdy.
What's going on, man?
You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Good, man. I'm hanging in there. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. Of course. Yeah, likewise. What you been up to?
Not much this weekend. Not much. Been working a lot, but that's it. Just plugging away, working, hanging out with the family. And that's pretty much it.
That's it. Nice. Yeah, it's been an interesting weekend my way, man. My dad's in the hospital, so
really,
yeah, he had some complications. Friday, started throwing up, having an upset stomach, and had blood in his stool, and ended up rushing him to the ER. So he's been in the hospital since Friday. Which I don't know. Thinking about moving him to a different hospital, man. They really don't seem to know what they're doing there. So, but it is what it is. He's stabilized. It's just the main issue is he's got a good bit of blood in his stool, and that's not normal. So, but anyway, yeah. Appreciate any prayers. What's up, KOs?
Yeah, absolutely.
And stuff, but yeah, it's all good, man. Just kind of out of left field. So, but. What you been up to? How's the holidays and everything?
The holidays were good. My wife's family came in town. We hung out with them, and that was nice. It's always good to have them come up because she doesn't get to see them that much. So that's always nice. And Thanksgiving was fun. We had like the entire family up here from Florida, like my side of the family. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's for the most part pretty chill. We watched some football, and we watched the Iron Bowl together as a family, which was intense because everybody's an Alabama fan, and like the entire game was pretty awful. Not that Bears actually care about football. I get it. You're so woke, but our family like really cares about Alabama football, so it was like super depressing like the entire game. But
right. Well, dude, I lived in Alabama for years, and, like from living there, like it grew on me to where I became an Alabama fan because it was like you're either an Alabama or an Auburn fan.
Yeah,
and,
serious.
Like there's no, like, it's just straight black or white with that. But, like the last couple of years, I haven't really paid attention. This year, dude, I hadn't watched a single football game or anything. And then, like, the day of the game, like, a couple of people messaged me or whatever, and I realized it was on. I didn't even know it was the Super Bowl until somebody told me, dude. I'm just, since working from home and stuff, it's not even that I'm like, it's not even been an intentional thing. It's just kind of faded out. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. I'm like, watching football kind of helps me relate to like the people I work with too. Like there are some things like I did end up watching like a good bit of playoff NFL football. I don't watch I haven't watched NFL games in a long time. Like we have the Titans, but I don't really call myself a fan. It's cool if they win, but I completely bailed on the Predators. I was a big Predators fan, but they just got so woke and like it just was so, which is a shame because I don't think the players are necessarily, but you know, they push it all just because it's what you do if you're in the sport. But I just like the sport. I really like football. I think it's a great sport. It's fun to watch. It's like the perfect match of brains and brawn, kind of going at it. The coaching back and forth is always a fun chess match to see.
Yeah,
and
and I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Saban, man. Like even apart from the game of football, you know what he did to the. I know you went to Alabama and everything, but you know he really did a lot of stuff for actually trying to help people. You know, as far as the ins and outs behind the scenes of him as a person, I have no clue. But you know, to people that didn't have so much of an opportunity to like really have a career in football, or even if they thought they were going to have a career in football, he really has pushed for them to have a fallback plan and stuff, you know, whether it be tutoring or, you know what I mean? He's like really revamped their structure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a pretty amazing thing. Like, and anybody on that kind of elite level, like a Michael Jordan or a Saban or a Brady, it's interesting. There's something very fascinating about that. And, just that drive that's kind of almost inhuman.
Right.
That, but yeah.
Well, well, you had a bunch of different stuff that you kind of wanted to hit on, man. I guess we can kind of start with Magic. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been thinking about it. I've thought about that a lot over the years because, like, growing up, like anything with Magic in it, like I wasn't even allowed to watch on TV. Like, and there's some people that I know that grew up kind of similar that think that was dumb. But like I tell my mom, I was like, well, I was like, actually in hindsight, looking back, it's like I appreciate that you didn't let me watch stuff like Scooby-Doo because it was like I would probably have been freaked out by that stuff as a kid, and it probably like I know kids like or like people that I grew up with that would watch like really intense horror movies as children, and it like it affected them, you know, and you can see how it like kind of like stunts wonder and imagination a bit in some ways, but yeah, Magic, it's like, well, and another thing that spurred it off, because like I sent you that video of like of Pastor Greg Locke talking.
Yeah,
it's funny, somebody just already called me Zach Galifianakis. Like I get recognized more as Zach Galifianakis. Like literally people come up to me like asking for an autograph, like not even kidding, like not believing that I'm not him. And it's like, it's funny, like but I get recognized more as him than I do myself, I think, by people I haven't seen in a long time. But anyways, the you're like, you look like that guy from The Hangover. I'm like, Bradley Cooper? Thanks.
Right. I mean, you resemble him, but it's not like, you know, I wouldn't, if I saw you, be like, that's got to be Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is he's actually lost a bunch of weight, so I don't even look like him anymore. Which is the funny thing. But so anyways, I said that's kind of like where I come from, but like growing up, well, he was having that discussion. He was having that thing where he was like and he lives like right down the street. Like I like his church is like we grew up in two houses in this small, it's bigger now, but a small town in Tennessee. And well, I can't even look at the chat right now. Sorry.
Yeah, dude, you can't. They'll jam you up just about every time.
You'll get it, Woodshop. Don't worry. I'm sure I'll do it just naturally. Yeah. but this guy's church, it's like right in this little town that I grew up in, and it's loud and it's abrasive, which I don't like mind. And it, like, I mean, especially like I tend to lean towards people who are offensive, like people who offend the sensibilities of the world that we live in. Like I find it refreshing to see somebody really challenging the norms. But I should have brought some water. I got some tea though.
Get some Milo's. Man, dude, Milo's is like gold in Alabama. It's like insane how many people drink that.
Yeah, I
like,
know.
That's the go-to.
Yeah. And so anyways, he's caused up quite a stir in our little town about this like book burning that he's having, or that he had. It was to burn like magic stuff, you know, crystals and stuff like that, and like and some, I think some bears like them, which I get it. I just don't, and I'm like I'm pretty slow. I reserve my judgment on stuff. I still do, because I haven't been to his church. I don't know the guy. I know what people say about him. But my critiques are usually different. Like I'm the guy, I've like even defended Joel Osteen. We've talked about that. Not because I don't think that there's something off, but because I feel like the critiques are poor. So, but he's talking about magic, and that just made me think. I just kind of sat back and thought about it. I was like, well, like, what is magic exactly? Like, because to me, like, magic is like vibrating copper in the walls to heat the house or to have it be illuminated. You know, it's like light. I work at an electrical warehouse. You know, it's like, to me, all that stuff we sell to like wizards who go out there and like wield electricity and harness it to put light, you know, to illuminate. And I started looking up, like I was asking this electrician, I was like, so what is a ground exactly? Because I'd seen like how they work, but I'm like, what's happening with the ground? And they're like, I don't know. You know, like you just ground it. That's all you know. And I'm like, well, what is like? And so like I'm asking more and more electricians. I'm like, what is a ground? Like, what is electricity? They're like, I don't know. Like nobody knows what this is. I'm like, well, how? Like if I cut a copper cord in half, you know, from an HDMI cord or something, like I'm not going to see a smaller version of what's showing up on the TV. Like why? What happens there? Like it's like some sort of a magic experience that we're having on this black screen where copper is vibrating and sending signals from somewhere else to my living room. And now all of a sudden I have these like people talking in my room. It's like you know, it's like a, you know, talk about Ouija boards. I'm like, what about the TV? You know, it's like, and so that was, cause I like to like just tackle things, like go straight to like the
root maybe.
Yeah, the root, the principle of it, like how principled is this this concept? And I reserved. I have my thoughts and reservations about the man, just because it's called like, just personally, it's like called Global Vision. His church is, and I'm like, he's pissing off literally everybody in the town. Some people need to be pissed off. I get it, but it just is like, is there like a local vision? And he does do charitable stuff, but you know, so I'm not hating. But as far as like what is magic, because also like I've also been fascinated by like Walt Disney for a long time. I thought he was a very interesting person, and I know like especially in the crowd that we run in, people have very intense opinions about stuff like Disney, and I do too, like on the corporate level especially. But like you know, as a kid, I wrote I did a like a small thesis in college on the business of Disney, because I remember watching it as a teenager and being like, dude, like they don't advertise any. This is on cable television, and they literally don't advertise anything but Disney. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just from a business perspective, like that's very impressive. Like all they do is advertise their own shows, their own parks. They have a whole world. In fact, like, and if you dig into it, Disney was like with Epcot, he died before Epcot could be made. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it just is like he had a whole thing where he wanted to make Epcot like a prototype city with like people actually living there. Mm-hmm. And he even when like the monorails were supposed to be like it's supposed to go from like I think Tampa to Orlando. Like he was really trying to revolutionize the way things worked. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to just create parks, which I thought was interesting. Like he was really trying to influence the world. And I think to a great degree did, but his legacy is weird. But I've always appreciated, I liked the, feel free to throw something in there too. Like I'm just kind of going at it, but like I always liked the approach that that Disney had with a lot. Of course, he got weird with some stuff, but it was honestly like if you look at it, it's honestly very open and clear. Like he calls himself, he made himself the wizard in Fantasia. Mm-hmm. Like his name is literally, it's like I don't know, it's his name backwards is the name of the wizard, and and so it's like, and he's like, and it's clearly like even I was talking about. Well, because my daughter's been watching Mary Poppins, and I'm like, I've never really seen it. I'm like watching it. It's like, it's I just was I wanted to know like what am I watching here exactly, and there's nothing in it that's like really scary, and that's really the reason I'm okay with her watching it is because there's nothing in it that's like. In like horrifying that you know like no big monsters come out. It's just songs and colorful stuff. But I'm like, who is this woman? What is she doing? What's her business here? Then they start singing about the 19th Amendment and stuff like that. I'm like, what is this? What is this show exactly? And I came to the conclusion finally. I was like, okay, because there's this one. Have you seen the movie?
Which one? Fantasia?
Mary Poppins?
It's been years. I've definitely seen it, but I don't remember much of it.
Well, it's like there's this scene where it's the song Feed the Birds. The tuppence a bag. It's a great song. But it's very like moving in a way with just the music. Mm-hmm. And the scene where Mary Poppins sings this song, like it shows the whole conflict is between like, you know, she's saying like there's the church over here with the apostles at the cathedral, and then there's the bank across the street where Mr. Banks works, and so there's this weird. But when they show the church, it's got it's clear like they got the black and white checkerboard. Like through, and I don't know, maybe St. Paul's Cathedral actually does have that, but it's the Freemasonry imagery is like clearly there, and he was a big time Freemason. Mm-hmm. So like that's not an accident to me, but it pans up, and then it shows it pans up the cathedral, and it's like deliberately done so to where like the cathedral has it fades from the cathedral into Mary Poppins' face, who's like looking up. And I'm just like, what is this? Like, so she's clearly pointing to the church as like a good place. She's like saying like, focus on the church is the kind of the point of this, like charity. And it just struck me, that imagery struck me where it fades in and out. I'm like, I'm going to get to the bottom of it because one, I've had I personally have liked Walt Disney, and I want to know what I'm ingesting. Also, like for my daughter, like I'm trying to like figure this, you know, like I'm like I just want to know what I'm watching because it's a weird movie. Yeah. There's still parts of it I don't understand, but like I was like, okay, this is a good movie. This is a movie about good. It's about, and that's kind of just the conclusion I came to was just like, and I know we kind of branched. It's all connected to me, I see, because it is like about magic.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you, man.
Okay, like the good and evil, the yin and the yang, it's like a factual story that we deal with. And I think like, cause this is the thing kind of going back to like what Greg Locke was saying about like come burn your Ouija boards and your crystals and stuff. I'm like, well, what about the founding fathers who, cause he was also talking a bunch of trash about Freemasons. I'm like, well, what about the founding fathers and the documents that they wrote? You know, it's like there was a lot of influence, like there was Freemasonry influence on like the American flag. And I think just calling it wicked is missing the mark a bit. Because I understand that it's like I get it on a level, but we also operate, I think, in a continually growing light that we see things better and we understand things better. And then I think that the trick is like the SJW move to then look back and be like, well, how could they have done, you know, it's like, look what they did. It's like, I don't think, first of all, that SJW look at it is like so twisted. And I think that a long time ago, they understood a lot of things that we don't understand today, just on a pure honesty level. Like they just kind of like kept things out in front of them. Instead we like hide things. Our culture does. But I think it just comes down to like the fact that like good versus evil was the whole point of like the Garden of Eden, was to give Satan a puncher's chance at our lives. And the good was inserted to give a puncher's chance for us to see life. You know, so it's like this like weird battle. And I think that's what, because it's funny too, because I remember Owen going like so hard in the paint against Batman back in the day and talking about how Batman, like all this stuff about Batman. And I was like, dang, I was like, come on, Batman's cool. But it's so true, all the stuff that he's saying. And I think it's because the whole story, it's all satanic to me. Good and evil is. Like the story of good and evil is kind of this like, for lack of a better understanding, it's a satanic story,
well,
as opposed to like the singularity of life. What was that?
It's the knowledge of good and evil. So it's rooted in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right?
That's kind of my line of thinking, yeah.
I mean, so like I grew up not being able to watch a lot of movies. My parents were anti-Disney before it was cool to be anti-Disney. So like the movies I watched growing up was like Swiss Family Robinson, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which I think that's a Disney movie technically. Somebody can probably let me know in the chat, but you know, stuff like that. Like we watched. I mean, it was like legit Puritan vibes, and you know, until probably I was, I don't know, 13 or 14. It was, I mean, we watched like Sandlot, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, there was just, if it had magic in it, for the most part, which Chitty Chitty Bang Bang technically has got some magic in it. They were like super anti-magic, but it's like what you're saying. It's like, what is magic? Like, what is your definition of it? What is your perspective of it? And I mean, technically, you could say these phones we're talking on right now is magic, or you know, like electricity or whatever. So it's like your lens of the technology. And I don't know, it's something I'm working through. Like, I don't know if you saw my post the other day, but with a lot of this AI stuff and everything people are going through, I'm trying to figure out what I believe or what my perspective is with it. But I believe a lot of it, the origin of it is wicked. And so that's kind of like where it ends up, is it being wicked. And not that you can't use it for the good or whatever, but it's like, where did it start? Where's your starting point? Just like you're saying, I think you and I share a lot of these perspectives. It's like, I like to break things down at the very, very, you know, fractal level, and then like build it back up to see the bigger picture. And you know, I don't know. Like, one of my major things that woke me up was this thing called The Truth About Hip Hop, and it was this dude that went through all these deep dives of Michael Jackson channeling demons. You know, the Man in the Mirror song being about the demon that gave him the songs when he was in deep sleep, and you know, or Color Me Bad, the song "Wanna Sex You Up," that they put a gigantic spell on that song that a million women would lose their virginity to that song, and then like there was over a million women that claimed to lost their virginity to it. So like the power of influence through melody and frequency that people don't even realize.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I don't know, something I'm working through, like, because there's a balance. Like, obviously, we're having value, we're having a conversation that's bringing value, and that I believe has good in it through this technology. So it can be influenced, or it can be in the hands of whoever is using it. But at the same time, there's these fractal dynamics to it that I'm still working through. You know, because I don't want to be like, man, let me burn my cell phone. You know what I mean? But at the same
Yeah.
time, like, it's like, where do these lines fall?
I think that's the part of it. And I think innocence really can take you a long way. What you said?
Jeez, I lost it. The juvenile back that thing up. That boy wild. Anyway, what were you saying?
Oh God. I think it's I think innocence can really kind of override a lot of stuff. And I think there's something to preserving that and making sure, because it wasn't like my family wasn't anti Disney, but definitely Disney. There was definitely Disney stuff I wasn't allowed to watch.
Right.
Heck, I wasn't even allowed to watch Power Rangers. I wasn't allowed to watch Ninja Turtles, and I think my parents were just like they were just like kind of protective, and they like didn't have the time to like, or I don't know, they just didn't care enough to be like go filter through a bunch of stuff on TV, or they just saw it and were like, nah, it's no good. I don't know. I don't really care that much. I think it's funny, kind of interesting, especially with the amount of media that we have today. I think about that as a parent, like, I'm like, God bless. So just like burn it all. I'm west of the Carolinas. Thank you, Paraplegic.
That was really bothering him.
Yeah. But yeah, so magic, good and evil. I think it's interesting because I was even with this, I think that's why like Owen on a lot of levels is kind of so above the fray on a bunch of nonsense, because on a practical level, like I see the value, the good in some of the things that are happening around the world, but also at the same time, like you can definitely see that black dot in there that's helping churn it right along. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, and I think that probably if a yin yang would be more accurately updated, an updated image, because I don't think it's as clear today what good and evil are. I think it's very muddled and confusing right now. The good and evil is like almost one. It's like kind of crazy. And I don't know. I mean, I've been wanting to do like a word search, like the original context of like when God said he made earth and said it's good, stuff like that, like what that word good actually means and comes from. Because I'm not trying to I understand like the word good isn't bad, you know, it just is.
Can I answer that?
Huh?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So at least what I've studied of some of the context of that word, it means whole and complete according to the original purpose and design. So it was according to its function, and it wasn't being used in any way besides the way it was originally designed. Now, that's not every time you see the word good, but that I believe specifically that I looked into it in some of Genesis. So even when, you know, it says, I'm trying to, or no, actually, it's that, and there's a similar breakdown of the word perfect, you know, where it says, be ye perfect, even as your heavenly Father is perfect. Mm-hmm. So it's about, you know, being in your design, being in your function, and not breaching your design or your function. So it doesn't mean that you're going to, like, never make a mistake or whatever, you know, because, like, I don't know. There's this back and forth with some of these scriptures, like, oh, well, it says be perfect. It's like, okay, so you literally didn't say anything stupid today, or you didn't have a negative thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The opposite end, where it's like people just like like that's impossible. That's obviously that verse shouldn't even be in there. And I'm like, well, I think it definitely has a reason to be in there, but like, there's definitely a context of it's like the whole thing is salvation. Everybody just wants to think it's one moment when like salvation is a continual process. You're being saved. So you're growing through and learning in your connection with God. It's not like boom, you just like snap a finger and then all of a sudden you're perfect. Like you don't ever make a dumb decision again or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Paul said. And even Owen was talking. I thought what Owen was talking about recently about it was a few weeks ago about the demon. What's it called?
With Tico.
Yeah, that's very interesting. The whispers, because it's like even what Paul said about he's talking about like it's not me but the sin within me.
Right.
Like he made the distinction of that and like a place where that stuff does not exist. Like what is it that like I actually desire as a child of God?
Right.
It's that stuff is very fascinating to me, and that helps. That makes a lot of sense. I have to think about it though, because your definition of like good of what you were saying, it kind of makes me think a little bit. So I'll give me something to think about.
I mean, it's interesting though, man. Like Genesis, the origin stories, all that. I've really always been drawn to that, and even how God said it was good in every context except for man to be alone. That we're not designed to be alone. That He knew, even in His wisdom, that like you need camaraderie, you need companionship, you need like connection and intimacy. We need our counterpart, just like you were saying, yin and yang, and light and dark. That's the dynamic of the masculine and the feminine. Like masculine isn't balanced out without feminine, and feminine is not balanced out without masculine. That's why I think, everybody, like I have so many friends that I've known and grown up with and stuff that either have never been married or divorced now. And it really blows me away, man, because they all are not happy. And, it's like this thing. And I've even known a few people in the last few years that like they got married very quickly and they've gotten divorced just as quickly. Some of them, the marriage didn't last a year. And like it's really, I mean, even with everything that I've been through, man, it's been very eye opening. Like we are so selfish as a people, like humanity as a whole, and to truly like walk in God's design, you have to have that, and it requires you to be selfless. So a lot of people are so selfish. It's easier for them just to be alone than to actually yield to somebody else or prioritize somebody else's wants and needs. Like I've learned a lot, and I feel like I've matured a lot in the past year, man, just by taking a hard look at myself and like what's caused me to get to where I'm at right now. You know what I mean? And like, and what would I do differently, and what can I do differently, like now and in the future, to make sure like I don't want to be alone. You know what I mean? Like obviously nothing's resolved with my marriage. I haven't really updated anybody on the streams, but nothing's finalized. I'm still standing for my marriage, but you've got to, either way you're going to have a hard time, whether you're by yourself or not. But
Yeah.
I think most people, it's just, I'm not trying to make shots at anybody or whatever. So if you hear this and you're single, I'm not trying to make accusations. Sometimes it's just a timing thing with the Lord giving you your person. But, I know personally a lot of people that have gotten divorced or whatever, all this stuff, just because they were not willing to do anything for the other person. And, it's designed to make you holy, man. It's designed to show your imperfections. It's designed to show you, you know what I mean? Like I'm saying all this from learning a lot from my mistakes. None of this is from a place of thinking I have any of it figured out.
Oh yeah, I'm laughing because of my mistakes. I promise. It's like it rings true to my ears. I mean, it's like that's a good way of putting it. It's like there to how do you say that? It's there to what?
To make you holy. It's there for you. I mean, it says, like I really went back through a lot of stuff, and I think it's Ephesians 4, Ephesians 5, where it says, "Husbands, lay down your life." Like it tells you to die. You know what I mean? Like a dead man has no rights, whatever. And that's not like cucking or whatever. It's saying if you serve your wife, if you love your wife, she's going to honor you. And in the next verse it says, "Wives, honor your husbands." So like men want to be honored and women want to be loved. And if you don't love your wife, she's not going to honor you. And if she doesn't honor you, you're not going to want to love her. You know, it's that dynamic.
Yeah, it's real easy to be like Adam. That line, that's like the funniest line I think ever written ever is in Genesis when Adam's like, that woman. He just is like,
The woman you gave me.
Yeah, the woman you gave me. That's pretty funny.
And there the blame game happened, and the victimhood. Yeah. Boom, that was the root. All you can trace it all the way back to that. Instead of saying, you know what, and it indicates that he was there with her. Like it doesn't clearly say it, but it implies that he was there. Yeah. So, you know, and ultimately, and he knew this, God held him responsible. So he could have just been like, I screwed up or something, anything, but how dare her? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We're kind of getting off topic, but just, I mean, going back to the magic thing, man, like, even the Disney stuff, it's not so much, because I've watched a ton of Disney movies since and whatever, like, you know, some of them, the thing that stands out more to me, or more than anything else to me in Disney, is the trauma. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's like 3-year-olds seeing somebody die or whatever. It's like, what happened to Bambi's mom? You know what I mean? Like, it's the first death you experience.
Yeah. And I have, and that's I totally agree. But it's interesting though, because I wonder about stuff like that. Like I wonder if it's, I don't know. I'm kind of torn because it does seem like a bit. It is manipulative, right?
Right. Yeah.
But is it necessary? Because that's the stuff I'm trying to keep my daughter from. But then I like look back, you know, like that, like Russian nights, what do you call it, lullaby, and stuff like that, and these old stories, you know, the Grimm brothers and stuff like that. Like they were like really intense. They told some really intense stories, and sometimes I wonder if it's just like how soft I've gotten, where I'm like, no, I can't show Bambi's mom dying, or if it's like, or if there's something to it. I do think that there's something about preserving
innocence.
Yeah, because it's like, I think even a lot of Disney movies, especially like Pixar movies, are like for adults about kids.
Right. They're not even, dude. Yes.
Because it's like the Toy Story, dude. I mean, I saw that age when I was Andy's age, and I was like, dude, yeah, I love my toys, dude. I had like, it's like and this is why, stuff like in fact, I was watching some weird guy on YouTube discuss irony and the different levels of irony. And it's like, and it's gotten to this point where it's like post meta irony and all this stuff. And it's like just raveling in on itself, but it's like out, and it's like so bizarre. But it kind of makes sense to me on a level, like where they're coming from and why they're going the direction they are with what irony is. I have not cracked that whole egg, but it's very interesting. But oh crap, I can't remember what I was going to say about it though. What were we just talking about?
Irony, protecting the kids.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Anyways, it just was like
being for adults, movies being for adults.
Oh yeah, I can't remember, but it just is like, I think, I don't know why I was talking about irony. I don't know, but I
mean, it's fitting, dude. Irony is like, dude, I can't tell you how many things a day it's just dramatic irony overflowing. I like something will happen and then boom, and I believe it's God, man. Like you'll say this will never happen, and then literally the same day it'll happen. I mean,
Yeah.
it's happened so many times at this point. I mean, and I think it, because the enemy, like the devil, loves irony too, but it's always a humiliation ritual. But when God does it, He does it in a way more subtle way, where it's like, are you paying attention? You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
like so much a slap. I mean, He can use it to slap you in the face as well, but I don't know, it just has a different vibe to me when the enemy, it's like, oh, I'm
Oh,
not
for
going to get
sure.
pulled over, and then you get pulled over. That to me, that's the enemy. But God's like, oh, I'm not going to do this, and then as soon as you say I'm not going to do that, He's like, I got something for you. I want you to do something, and it's exactly what you were like. I will never do this in my life, But
Yeah, yeah.
it's not a bad thing though.
Yeah, no, I totally. I mean, I've even gotten to the point where I try not to say stuff like that anymore because it just like it'll happen, you know. I
Like
feel like that's
I'm not moving to Florida. Oh, you're moving to Tampa.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So,
Oh man, I
well,
in fact, I kind of got. I don't know if you read the article that I like in the Beartari Times magazine, but I try. I hope I want like somebody's opinion about it because I talked about meme magic and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like it kind of got lost in the sauce a little bit. I hope it makes sense. I'm not entirely sure it did because I feel like you really have to because that's kind of what I was getting into is like this weird mimetic warfare that people were waging where I was just like, okay, and it was done without shame, and it was fun to watch. It was like 4chan poll boards, like relentlessly harassing Shia LaBeouf, like
right,
stuff
yeah.
like that is just like endlessly entertaining, but to what end? It's like,
Mhm.
um, anyways, what
Yeah.
were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just going to read. I'm terrible pronouncing people's names, but Schulten, whatever said, it's like a teachable moment versus humiliation. I think that's a good way of explaining it. It's like a kingdom of light versus the kingdom of darkness with irony. There was something else I was going to say in connection with that, but no, I honestly I haven't read your article. I even planned on doing it. I'm just being well. What's funny is I planned on doing it, and then I was at the hospital till like 5 something, man, and then
No,
I got
you.
distracted. But I did it. I did honestly intend on reading it before the stream, and then I forgot. So that
No, it's
doesn't
all
count
good.
for nothing. But as far as the meme magic and stuff, though, I think there is something to it. And even actually, this is good direction ahead with it. The AI generator, the narrative thing that everybody's been doing for like 3 or 4 days, man. I just didn't even want to touch it. I felt some kind of weird vibe off the whole situation. Not even like I'm being serious, man. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't put a finger on it. It's interesting some of the stuff that I'm like apprehensive of and whatnot. But then I generated that one thing about truthers, and it's like it's feeding you truth, but it's also feeding you the power of suggestion of what the end result it wants to be. Like with everything they're pushing with all these movies for AI, all this nonsense and everything for years, that's what they want it to be. So even subconsciously, they're trying to push us in that direction. And like to make it full circle to what we're talking about with magic, I think that's the big defining thing for me with magic is it trying to draw you and manipulate your emotions, your intentions, your desire, whatever, into something that is either rebellion against your design or it's something that is causing destruction or damage. And whatever that may look like or whatever, I don't, like magic it has layers to it. It can be many things, but ultimately I think it's subverting your free will in some way or another.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like that Norm Macdonald joke about getting like um, about having hypnosis to quit smoking. He's like, you quit smoking, but you lose your free will. I mean, it's like that. Norm Macdonald does the punchline like he does, but
I mean, that's interesting though. Like, you're being hypnotized to quit smoking cigarettes, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that's crazy. So
yeah,
if it's real and if it works, like, what else can they do to get you to subvert your subconscious?
yeah. It's like subvert the subversion. It's like, are you digging? It was like Mitch Hedberg said. He said, "I remixed the remix, and it was back to normal." Um, but it's kind of like that weird tampering where you just keep tampering with stuff. It's like you take a pill for this pill for that pill for this pill. And I think that, and that's another thing, like pills, you talk about like pharmakia and magicians. And that's where I'm like, kind of like, sorry, I don't, my mic stand, or I don't, is my audio okay?
You're good for
I end up
me.
like tapping,
Everybody,
like I'm like
banana.
banging on the, but it's like, it just is like to come out and be like, we're burning Harry Potter books. I'm like, do you, that just seems old to me. I'm like, I mean, and I'm not saying good can't come from it. I don't know. I don't really have like a thought on that. Really, I don't. Um, but I'm just like, what is like magic exactly? Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about magic? It's like, is it just the things that we like to point at and be like, that's evil, that's evil, that's the evil thing there, that's the evil thing, that's evil. When in reality, I think it's like everywhere. It's just is like it's all around me, and it's just is like I don't think it's all just. I think it's just silly to be like all magic is evil. I'm like, no, I think some of it's good. I think some of it's doing. I don't know. Maybe it is all evil, but to even like to suggest that like we know like what we're. I'm like, well, let's burn the American flag. Let's burn pills. Let's go all the way with it. It's like let's go Amish. Let's just start a community and just like, do away with all the magic stuff. But even then, I bet Amish people do magic stuff. It's like, I don't know. I bet they got some weird tricks that they do. I just don't think there's any getting really away from it all until it's taken. And I think that's kind of what it means to be in the world but not of it, is to be like, just be cool when it's taken away. And that's kind of like how I view football too. Like, I really enjoy football. Like, I enjoy the sport of it. But like when it's taken away, I'm not going to be moved. It just is going to be like, oh, well, that was interesting. Because even football is like Freemasonic, I think, in a way. It's like, because it's like life, but measured in inches. It's like all the metaphors are there. It's like, it's why it's so interesting to watch, because like life is like hard to gauge. Things are kind of, except for money's not hard to gauge, but like victory, like what does victory look like? And in football you have like markers. Like, this is what victory looks like, where it's like you're progressing and then you're regressing, and it's very like, monkey brain. Like, I understand, like, you move forward good, you move back bad, it just is like and then you score, yay, it's like, it's fun. But I don't know. I don't know what to really make of it all. I'm just kind of tired of throwing the baby out with the bathwater with it. Like, I feel like everybody's like, no, all this is crap, and then they're like, oh, this is good, and then they're like, no, wait, I changed my mind. It's like, it's the opposite of that, and then people just keep like, and I see this with people who get like super religious, and then they like, they're like all about the church, and then they get burned by the church, and then they're like they turn super, I don't know, what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I went
just
through all of it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I went through, being raised in the church, you couldn't convince me to step into a church, then to going through school of ministry, being a part of leadership of the church, to the church being above reproach, and like you couldn't tell them anything wrong after extended periods of time of being like, this needs to be dealt with, and then basically being like, we just want your gifts and the things that you're willing to do for us, but we really don't want you to tell us anything that's off. To, I mean, I stepped away from the church. I mean, I stepped down from any position of responsibility. And then for, I went to a home church for like a year and a half, which that home church, dude, to me, this is my opinion, to each his own, whatever. But to me, I believe it's designed like it was in Acts, to where if you got 30 to 40 people in a home church, everybody has got their purpose, everything they bring to the table, everybody has, community, they're seen and heard, they feel valued and all that stuff. I believe that's the best dynamic. Once you get, I mean, you can have a bigger number of people than that, but once you hit like 100, 200, 500 or whatever, people just feel like a number. They don't feel valued. They don't, and that's, you don't go to church to feel valued. You go to church to be a part of the body. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
To be the church. And so like this mindset of what do I go to get out of it, instead of like I'm going because I'm bringing myself to the equation. But I was very angry and frustrated for a couple of years, to where like I still have a good connection with God, but that saying, like I love God, but I hate Christians. I understand that to the fullest extent for a lot of people, because there's so many people that are so confused about God just doesn't move the way we do. And he doesn't respond the way we do. And the more that I've learned and I've grown in my connection and stuff, like a lot of things that offend me don't offend God. Like I used to like cuss constantly, all this other stuff, or like I would have these conversations with people that were like universalists or atheists or all the just any kind of ist you can think of. And I would have these conversations. And when I originally started, I was trying to, even if I didn't realize that, I was trying to convince them that God was real. And through the process of like, this was like a year and a half deal of having these conversations, some of them like 3 or 4 hours long. Like I spoke with one universalist for like 3 hours, dude. And then like in that, and that was actually a huge breakthrough for me, because by the end of it, I realized it wasn't my job to convince him God was real. And it set me free from like having to defend God, or to, you know what I mean? Like any of that
Yeah.
stuff. It's like, let people be them if they want it or whatever, or, any of that stuff. Cool. If they don't, like, don't breach people's free will. Don't try to force God on them. If they want it, then he's right there willing to have a conversation. But if they don't want it, that's okay too.
Yeah. 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 Like it was like an apologetics kind of scenario.
I've always not been enthusiastic for that. I mean, because it's got apology in the word. And I'm like, I'm not going to apologize. You know what I mean? I'm not going to apologize. But it was just more, I've always wanted to understand where people are coming from. But even, I didn't realize at the time, but I was trying to convince them, even if I didn't think I was. And, so it was, because people were like, well, what about this about the Bible? Or what about this? Or what does this verse mean? Like one verse, this is a good time to bring this up. So the verse in Hebrews people always use is, well, if somebody tastes the goodness of God and then they go back to there's whatever the thing is, then they made the sacrifice of no value. And like people are always like, well, does that mean that if you choose God and then you go back to doing dumb stuff, that God's no longer going to accept you or whatever? And I'm like, well, that was written to the Hebrews, and the context was of them, going back to blood sacrifice, and them going back to the traditions of rituals qualifying their connection to God. So, like, I've literally heard thousands of people misquote that in their life of saying, if you stop pursuing God, or you're like, okay, God, you pissed me off, I'm done with this, then like there's no sacrifice that's acceptable. And it's like that's not even the context. Like he
Yeah.
say, I mean, that was them after they had all this back and forth, they started saying, all right, well, let me start sacrificing again to qualify myself. And they're saying that Jesus's blood was not enough. And so it's like stuff like that where people, they have these ideas, and it's like, if you just really get the context, you'll see that there's a deeper understanding of a lot of this stuff. But you just got to consider, one, who it's speaking to, like what it's speaking about, and the translations of what's going on in it. But I don't know. I just got on a sidebar tangent, but
No, I mean that kind of like, I mean, talk about like one of the things I was talking about was like the revelation of Jesus Christ. You know, it's like, and to me, that's what it is. I think it's like, because I've seen like two, you know, you see it like, I mean, it was like whenever Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris had that talk, and everybody was like, nothing happened. It was a complete stalemate of nonsense. You know, because they were just like, they couldn't agree on like truth. You know, it was like they couldn't agree on like the simplest thing, which is kind of like a great showcase of how much of a waste of time a lot of that stuff is. Because two like really high IQ guys, whatever, it just is like are kind of banging their heads against each other, and they couldn't agree on like the simplest thing. And they talked about one thing for like 3 hours, and nothing happened. I think like, and there is a value though in being able to have like an intellectual understanding that you can kind of like, you know, because I think the church has done a very poor job with artists and high IQ people.
Yeah.
I think that, and so like there's value in it, you know, that even in what that guy was saying about all the layers of irony, he's like some like postmodernist, you know, kind of guy, is like, seems kind of like a psychopath, but there was value in what he was saying, and about like using it as like a literary, what do you call it? A literary tool of like, to pierce through levels of misunderstandings to kind of like signal to another person that like, I feel you. And it was interesting. Like I resonated with it a little bit, but it's like missing like the simple truth of what truth is. It's like the simplicity of honesty and the simplicity of truth. It's like that really sums it up. In fact, even with like the good and evil stuff, like the way I kind of explained it to my wife when we were watching it, and like was just that, like, I say watching it, we're watching, because I was really, dude, it was like, I was like in a spell of like racking my brain about Mary Poppins. Like that was real. For a while I was like, what is this? Because it's all we had on the TV. And I'm like, okay, so this is a good story. But it's not life, you know? And so it's like, whereas the difference is in like, it's a good story in that it points to like Mary Poppins' job is to get the dad to kind of like settle down and understand, reorient his priorities back towards his family, back towards charity, back towards the church. And it's like, and so it's like, but it's not, and even though it shows the church, it's like, what would make it life, I believe, would be if it was directly about like Jesus. You know what I mean? It's like if they were like directly talking about like sin and salvation, you know, I think that would be life. Whereas opposed to, it's not, it kind of beats around the corners of it. And so I think it just would be good, you know? And that's my interpretation of it anyways. Cause it's like, to like have like some, because I don't think Jesus is like something that you can understand. I think he's something that you are given. You know, it's impressed upon, and that's the way I experience it. Is like I can have like an intellectual understanding of it, which I think has value, but it's like to know Christ is to be impressed upon, to have like a really like you're sealed. It's like because otherwise it's just a bunch of knowledge, which is, to me, it's like that's not God. It's not life anyways. I mean, it can be God. God uses knowledge.
It says that you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free. But the word to know is experientialism. So knowledge from experience. So you'll experience the truth, and from that experience, it'll make freedom a reality.
Interesting.
You know, like there was something you were saying that was jarring my thoughts, but with the connection of Jesus, I don't know where you were going with it. I got sidetracked, but oh well, just it says that the gospel is an offense in and of itself. It offends the mind, and
Mm-hmm.
it says, just like when Jesus asked Peter who he was, he said, "You are the Christ," and he said, "Flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you." So there's literally no way that you can know any of this without the Spirit of God revealing it to you. And it's only through, like, when Pontius Pilate said, "What is truth?" You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that kept coming to my mind as you were saying that about Peterson and Sam or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, like, they have no grid for truth because it's all rooted in humanism. It's all rooted in their own intellect. And it's like that verse. God uses the foolish things to confound the wise because it's not wise according to the spirit. There's like emotional intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence, there's these different dynamics, right? So, like, I'm a midwit, like, according to natural, like, intelligence. I'm not super intelligent as far as, like, education background or any of that. But, like, by the spirit of understanding and spiritual intelligence, I have an okay grid of things. I can process through it through Holy Spirit. But I think it's easy to get jammed up in these things and not see the greater truth of them. Like, they actual truth, like with a capital T, confuses them because they have no understanding what they're looking for.
Yeah. That's something I ran into. I remember, I think the first time I ever kind of felt that was whenever I was like, it was back on Twitter, man. It actually was like whenever this dude was releasing some kind of a hit piece on Owen. I actually got his attention on Twitter when everybody was kind of having a back and forth, and like I was like kind of going at it with this guy. And I remember like I started just asking people before I would like argue with them. I'd be like, "Do you believe in God?" Because this guy, like, I finally figured out, was just like he was making no sense. Like, he was
Right.
making no sense at all, and I was like, and it was confusing me because he appeared intelligent,
Right.
right? And it just was like, but I was like, but he's not. I'm like, because he won't make any sense. Like, and I finally figured it's like he doesn't believe in God. Like, he just, there's no basis for like grounded truth. There he goes, that grounded word. Talk about magic and electricity and grounding things. It's like there just was nothing in him to be like, I don't know. It was so bizarre, and I just remember that like kind of changed the way something clicked in my head. I was like, oh. Like, he doesn't want it to make sense. And I realized, yeah, it's just some people just don't want it to make sense, I guess.
They don't at all. Dude, we haven't acknowledged the chat much at all tonight, so we'll do that. We've been going an hour already. What's up, KO? What's up, Harry? Kmart? Woodshop. Hooked on Ebonics worked for me. So what's Longbow? All right. Well, dude, we really haven't even tapped into a whole lot of it, but, like, I want to. Well, I guess we can go with life. You wanted to talk about life in general.
Oh, life. I just meant in the context of good and evil.
I got
like
you. Okay.
Good and evil, like because they're talking about breaking the. We're talking, well, we used to talk a lot or whatever, breaking the binary. And I think the only way to do that is like, because to me, I see binary as like a parallel. It's like a two-dimensional plane. In fact, dude, tell me if this is not like, I don't know if you're trying to get off here or not. That's fine, but
No,
like,
I'm straight, dude.
tell me, like, because to break the binary is like life, right? Because that's how I see it. I think that's a great example of how to break binary is life. I've been made fun of for talking about some of this stuff, but it's just as like, to me, I think it's fascinating that we talk about dimensions, like in this quantum physics. Like, people talk about quantum physics, and it's like they're like, because everybody likes this old Carl Sagan video where he's like got the 2D land. Have you seen that old video where he's like it's like a 3-dimensional character is interacting with 2D characters who only see, you know, width. And it's like, and you know, as in college, I'm like, whoa, mind blown, you know, like that's crazy, because you can see it's like, you know, it's like he's shape shifting as he goes through it. I'm like, oh, it's like the cherubim, you know, and there's some truth to it, I think. But what is a dimension? You know, it's like, what, like, I mean, is this really 3 dimensions, or is it 360 dimensions? You know what I mean? Like, what is a dimension exactly? Like, I know, like, on some like basic level it's 3 dimensions, but like, point to me to something that's actually 1 dimension. Because people use the first and the second dimension. I'm full spiral mode, but it's like, people like will use the first and the second dimension to explain the fourth and the fifth and how we interact with it. But I'm like, dude, there's no such thing as 2 dimensions. There's no such things as 1 dimension. People are like, yeah, it is. It's a point on a piece of paper. I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense, because if you zoom into it, it's still 3 dimensions. You know, like, I mean, like, there's no such thing as 2 dimensions. There's no such thing. Well, actually, I take that back. I think the shadow is the closest thing to 2. I think a shadow might be the only thing that's 2 dimensions. And that's it. But there's no such thing as like, and I think that's interesting on its own, but I don't know what started me on this tangent, but it's like, you said something, I think.
Something about life.
Something about life, yeah. I don't know. But it's like, how these like things interact with each other just doesn't make sense to me. I think the whole paradigm, and that's what I think about, like, the idea of the Trinity being like a triangle. I don't know about all that, but like the unity of being like in sync with one another, to me, makes a lot more sense. To be like, to where, like, in other words, you so much are of that person, you are that person. It just is like I could not be any. Because it's about a direction, anyways. Because it's like people like talk about like, huh?
Are you traveling east?
Am I traveling east? I don't know what that means. Is that an Eastern thought?
No, that's what the Freemasons say to each other.
Do they say? Are you serious? What does that mean?
I swear, it's a reference to leaving the Garden of Eden. That says that Adam and Eve went east, and even after Cain killed Abel, he traveled east. So it's a reference to that. And I don't know, man. That was just a random thought, but what were you saying? Sidebar squirrel. With 2 ADHD dudes hang out.
Yeah, right. I know. Exactly. I just think like the whole concept of like, because we have it, and especially from like movies now, it's like we think of like the 5th dimension being like somebody rips open the sky, you know, and maybe, but like I don't think that's how dimensions work. I think the whole like kind of paradigm of thinking about dimensions is off, because the whole idea of using 2 dimensions to explain the 4th dimension doesn't make any sense. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've never really put a whole lot of thought into. Like KO was talking about stuff, heaven, hell, and all that. And this is my perspective and opinion with anything in the context of dimensions. I believe that usually, but like heaven and the spirit realm and everything is usually just beyond our lens of understanding. So, you know, everything is like a projection over the spirit realm, and everything is like just, you know, fractal lights or whatever. Like, if you want to get super heady with it, like, none of this is real. You know what I mean? It's all just like what we perceive of different dynamics of life. But, you know, especially when it comes to the spirit realm, and like I've seen and experienced a lot of stuff with the spirit realm, and you know that verse that everything that we can see is made up of the things of the unseen realm, like Colossians and stuff, and just how there is a layering to it is where my head goes when you're talking about just 2D, 3D, or whatever, and whenever you break it down, like, and like simplest form, everything is the spirit realm. And then like
Mm-hmm.
it makes the spirit realm that much more tangible, but then it also, I don't know, for some reason it grounds me in the natural as well. I don't know. That's just what my
Yeah,
thoughts were.
that totally makes sense to me. It's true. The fifth dimension is being behind a bookshelf, which that's that whole like there. Because I'd go like I'd be sitting around. It's like no wonder I don't have any friends because like I'm like sitting around like with my friend. Like, dude, did you have these experiences with like your friends where you're like trying to like I had this like group of friends. God bless them. I'm still friends with some of them, but it just is like I don't hang out with that group anymore. And it's like they would be like I would start to feel like I was like hanging out with NPCs because it would be like we'd hang out and at the same time we'd talk about like the same thing. We'd like talk about movies or something, and then like some more time would go on, and like we'd have the same argument. It was like, dude, it was like the same thing over and over again. And this is back when I even like believed in the moon landing stuff. I'm sure we've talked about this now that I'm saying this out loud, but it was like I believed in the moon landing stuff. But at the time, Owen was like spiraling about it, and I was just like, "It's like y'all think there's anything to this moon landing stuff?" And they like had such a vitriolic reaction to it. I was just like, "All right, you know." So, but anyways, I was like spiral about like how love is actually material in an extra dimension. It's like shit nobody cares about. Like
Getting super heady. Well,
yeah.
well, and this is, dude. I see more NASA like merch and nonsense now. It's insane. I see a T-shirt, a hoodie, something. Probably, and I'm never even out. You know what I mean? But like, anytime I go to town, whatever, somebody's wearing something with NASA, and I'm like, these jokers are pushing so hard, man. Like,
yeah, for
just
sure.
brand recognition nonsense, nonstop.
Yeah, I know. It's true. It's pretty wild how, because I remember I was like, when did this become like this hipster thing to like wear NASA stuff? I don't know. It's like super trendy now.
I mean, we got Kodak Black calling it out, so we're winning. We got gangster rappers from Florida talking about the moon landing's not real. So I mean, apparently everybody's waking up.
Who is that?
Kodak Black.
I don't know who that is.
You're not missing anything. he's just a ghetto gangster rapper, man. I don't know.
Dude, I'm always just like, okay, so the freakiest thing to me that I don't talk about any of the technical stuff. I go straight for the narrative when I talk about the moon, and I'm just like, okay, so his mom's Buzz Aldrin. We'll just skip by the fact that Buzz's name is Buzz, right, and he was a drunk. Let's just move on by that because that's weird all on its own. But like his mom's maiden name was Moon, and she killed herself the year they went to the moon. But before they went to the moon. So I'm like, so you're telling me all these pictures, and nobody talks about the context of these pictures of this lonely ass dude standing on this lonely ass rock in the darkest darkness imaginable is on something called the moon, which was his mom's name, and she had just killed herself. I'm like, nobody talks about that in these images, like how dark and creepy that is. Like just this like lonely man just sitting out on this rock thinking about his mom, because it's like, that's what he's thinking about if he's actually on something called the moon.
It's wild. Hey,
like just stuff like that. Werner von Braun, all that weird stuff about like writing stuff like Nazis and Elon Musk or Elon, in his book. I'm like, all that stuff is such weird stuff. And then people are like, when did everything turn so crazy in the clown world? I'm like, I don't know. I think it's been here for a while, but
a while. Yeah. I mean, well, and so I don't know. This isn't something I'm super aware of. I've looked into a little bit, but it's been years, but it's something that keeps coming back to me. The fact that allegedly there were 3 presidents before Washington for the United States. Are you familiar with any of that?
No.
Yeah, so I've had some people, like I've had some bears bring it up randomly and whatnot, but I've had a couple other friends that have been truthers for a while that have brought it up to me that they're solid with their information. Like
Yeah, that's interesting.
it's a thing that was like legit buried and wiped from history. And
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know.
Would not surprise me at all.
I mean, when you look at just the way they've rewrote a lot of the things that have happened, it's very doable. I mean, even with a lot of this stuff with the Mandela effect, with some of it I believe is legit, and it's just like they're seeing if we're paying attention. But Woodshop says 13 presidents. I haven't heard 13, but it could be. I don't know. I've heard other people say I've heard other people say 12 as well, but I know that there for sure were more than Washington.
That's weird. There's so
Oh,
much stuff, man, about like there's just so much stuff about history that like does not make sense. That's why like I enjoy when Owen goes on his like spirals about like whether it's like the New Testament happening in France or like the mud floods and the cathedrals being cathodes and stuff like that. I'm like, I could totally see like some like thing where it's like actually there's not that much time since like I could totally just see how things could be completely lied about, with the way information goes and the way people are just like, oh yeah, totally, whatever that guy said.
right. Just run with it. It's like
Yeah.
a game of was it telephone? By the end of it, sounds nothing like what was
Yeah.
told to you.
It's like something everybody learns in like kindergarten that you can't rely on like like a like on a train of I don't know. Maybe I don't understand what I'm talking about, but
It's fine, man. Well, did you want to hit on the revelation of Jesus? Where were you thinking with that?
oh, I mean, I think we did. I mean, it just is like I think that it's people think that they can have this like I think a lot of Christians have an intellectual understanding of Christ but do not have the impression of him. Like have not been impressed upon, which I think can carry. I think there's probably some legitimacy to that and like some kind of like you believe like with Thomas you believe if you believe and you have not seen.
Right.
I think there's some of that, but like there's also like Paul getting thrown off a donkey and having like a total whacked out moment where he's talking he's seeing Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that I think it comes down because it was all the dogma around it I think is just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just think like the dogma is unnecessary when faced like when kind of like coming to terms with like when Christ like really impresses himself upon somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just no looking back from it because it's like I would deserve hell to turn back on that impression.
Yeah.
It's like
for sure.
So that's it. I think we talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, and my whole thing with a lot of that, and this is my perspective, and I don't know, I've went into this in different levels or whatnot before, but once I really started like trying to figure out God and stuff, like I really deep dove the Bible, and I read, the Gospels repeatedly, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, like over and over again, probably I don't know, at least 6 times all the way through, and then just deep dove the New Testament. I really focused on what Jesus said and did, like looked at the dynamic of his life, how he interacted in situations, all that. And then, once I had read through the New Testament a couple of times, then I went back through the Old Testament and like really deep dove everything with like, strong concordance. So I'm looking at root words, all this stuff, whatever, and to where one you realize that Jesus was pretty much spitting straight Old Testament when he talked to people, and then also Paul was spitting straight Old Testament when he talked to people, and then like just the dynamic of Jesus, what he said and did, how he interacted with people, and that he hung out with people you wouldn't expect him to hang out with. He moved completely different. but he had compassion for people. Every time people showed up as their self and were authentic with him, he he chose connection. Just like the lady at the well, the Samaritan woman or whatever. Every time in the dynamic of that interaction, she was expecting him to place judgment on her, which was what Jews did to Samaritans then, right? But every time he reassured her and created connection and value and reminded her of who she was. And she's supposedly, allegedly, the first actual evangelist. And her whole city, her family, and
Yeah.
thousands of other people were, radically transformed by her one encounter with Jesus at the well when he said, I'll give you living water. You know what I mean? And so, some of this stuff is not just history. It actually is history. But like when I read the Bible or when I post scriptures or whatever, like I want it to have the power of life in it. I don't want, it's the difference. So there's two words for a word in Greek. There is the rhema, which is the like a now word, or the rhema and the logos and the rhema. And so logos is the word, but rhema means a now word, which means it has the maximum punch and value right now in this moment. And so you could read a verse yesterday, but it not have the same impact now if it has a context and value where God's trying to emphasize. That Jesus said that you may have life and life abundantly. The word became flesh and dwelled amongst you. It became a part of your DNA. And so with a lot of that, when you're talking about the revelation of Jesus and stuff, like people abuse Jesus. People use his name for, to weaponize their agenda. People use it to gain profit or whatever. But all of it doesn't disqualify the value and the truth in it. And like people are like, it's Yeshua, whatever you want to call it, or like it's still true. Like Yeshua is the word, or like Jesus wasn't the word, or you know what I mean? We all know who we're talking about though, right? Because people get hung up on even some of that, and I'm like, but we're talking about the one that turned water into wine. The one that
Right.
that when people's like the thing that sticks out to me. I know it's spiraling right now, but there's some fascinating. If you go to John chapter 6 and that same dynamic of the interaction with Peter and Jesus, one. Like this is after he says, unless you eat of my flesh and drink of my blood, you can have no part of me. And it says, many people departed from him. And like one in that verse, or it's John chapter 6, verse 66, 666. It says, and that many departed from him, which means, in my opinion, it's always Satan that makes you separate from God. But besides that, he says to Peter, are you going to leave me too? And Peter says, but where would I go? Like when you speak, I come alive. He said, you are the only one that have words of eternal life. And that like is always, even now as I'm saying it, it's resonating so strongly with me. It's like there's a verse in Corinthians, I don't even remember where. There's a verse that says we've all been led astray by mute idols. So we were all looking for things that we thought were going to speak to us, were going to give us value, or give us life, or you know what I mean? Like that we were going to feel fulfilled or satisfied in them. And they all ended up not saying anything. They all ended up having no value. And then, so like we had to have the living word speak to us to realize that there's other things we're not talking, that they couldn't even speak if they wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's good stuff.
I mean, it stirs me up, man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. That when who was it that said where would I go? Was it Peter?
yeah, Peter.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's like I think that's why Paul called himself a slave to Christ. 'Cause it was Paul who said that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what else am I gonna do? Like for real, it's like, and that's the way I felt about a number of things. A couple, a handful of things in my life where I'm just like, why would I leave that?
Mm.
Like why? Like why? What else would I do? You know, like
Right.
where else would I find purpose? You know, I'm like, am I going to find it better somewhere else?
Well, it's
Excuse me.
just the paradoxes in life are so defined to me right now. But the Bible and connection relationship with God are walking paradoxes. It's just like God's the only one who rightfully has the ability to make you his slave. But at the same time, God's the only one that when you say, I'm a slave to you, it empowers you to live free, to be more free than you could ever be. Because, I mean, there's still restrictions, there's limitations to it. But in those limitations, there's freedom. It's just like, when you learn to play the piano, you got to know the limitations of those keys, but once you figure out the limitations of those keys, you can make beautiful music.
Yeah. That's probably some of the psyop around like slavery is to like make it so heinously like people like because I've talked about that around Christians. They're like, oh, that's not like in the Bible. I'm like, yeah, Paul talks about it. And like they're like, nah, it's different. I'm like, that's not. I don't. I mean, yeah, it is different, but it's like slavery has this like unconscionable in um like aura around it where you can't even like think about it or talk about it. I'm just like, well, it's like then that's the thing. It's like all this trauma has like melted people's ability to imagine. You know, it's like where's your imagination? Like people think that like that's what's funny to me too about a lot of Christians is a lot of Christians feel like, well, if I had my true power, then I'd actually be a threat to God, which is heresy. So I'm a piece of shit. You know, it just is like, you know what I mean? It's like, so they like go on this like whole thing where like Christians and everybody is actually a piece of trash. If you don't accept that you're a piece of trash, then you're never getting into heaven because otherwise you'd be like a threat to God. And it's like, and God, what God's, it's like, I think that whole line of thinking is like such a trap mindset of like, and it's funny. I watched this one girl talk about like how it just is like people will be like, well, Christians, all they do is like talk about how bad people are. And then they turn right back around and talk about how you're not good enough for certain things.
Right.
It's like mind blowingly hypocritical.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and, but I think, this whole concept of like thinking that you're somehow a threat to God, like you're like if you were to be great, that it would be like a threat to God. I'm like, no, I think it's like you're scared of what's in your own heart. I think that's what that one scripture, or it's not a scripture, it's a quote. I can't remember who said it though. It's like, what we fear is not like failure, but like being great. Who says what's that quote? I can't remember. It's like,
I don't remember who said it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
and I think
People
it's
are
because
way
it's
more afraid
the
of
revelation of your own heart. And I
Right.
think that's what money does to people. It's like it reveals the heart of people. And
I mean, power, influence, clout, whatever you want to call it. That's one thing where, like I've always been very apprehensive of influence and stuff, man, because I look at it for what it is. It's a responsibility. And when you realize that, to have any of this stuff, it just is more weight on you. And if your character isn't there, it's gonna like your favor and the grace on your life will get you places. They'll get you in the room or at the table, but your character is the only thing that keeps you anywhere.
yeah,
And I mean, I think that there's people think that by saying how terrible they are that it makes God look good. But you imagine like you as a dad, if you got your daughter, if she's just like I suck, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, you suck. You're going to be like, no, honey, you can do better.
yeah,
You know what I mean, right?
yeah.
And Harry asked something earlier. I forgot to mention that he's wondering when you guys are having another kid.
Oh
He
yeah,
asked that
well,
repeatedly.
yeah. Who was that? Bedros asking that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess whenever God lets us have one,
So we'll see. We'll see
Thanks
when
for
in
asking.
September is when
Appreciate it.
Well, what were you gonna say though?
I don't know. I can't remember.
It's all good. Well, dude, I've enjoyed the chat. We're going about an hour and a half. I mean, anything else that you were wanting to hit on? Illuminati, Freemason.
I think it's probably a good time to quit. I'm like at the point where I think I might just go. I think I might just start drifting right off into more like kind of incoherent spirals about.
I mean, I kind of enjoy it, so I mean, this is fine. You know, I mean, I've enjoyed it, man. I always enjoyed talking to you, Westside. The chat's been fun tonight. What's up, Moon Jazz?
Oh, congratulations on getting on Unbearables Media. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and dude, you know that was something that was locked in. I mean, one, I appreciate it, but that was something that was locked in last year, and it was just a timing thing and just working everything out. You know, it's awesome to see it grow and have another platform or have other people that are going to be aware of it. You know, like Papa J, everybody else that maintained it while I was taking a break and all that. Like, I I don't say this as a false humility statement because I literally laughed like I had no clue what I was doing when this worked itself out the way it did. It's a total God thing, and just how it's been handled and how things have flown has just God wanted this to happen, and so it did. You know, like I have an ability for facilitating and connecting with people and stuff, and seeing how things fit, but it's like definitely not just me by any stretch of the imagination. Like the streams, everybody does their own thing. Like as far as scheduling, deciding what they want to talk about, any of that stuff. We all are kind of self sufficient in that way. So it's really impressive when you have this many hosts, this many guests and stuff, and the fact that it's just worked the way it has. I mean, really, it's a testament to everybody that's a part of it. All the guests and everything. I'm seriously am honored that it's made it as far as it is. It is a blessing, and it is, it's something cool to say that it's on Unbearables Media or wherever else. All the other stuff. But there's so many. MJ, shout out to him for uploading these. Shout out to everybody that's hosted it. Everything. It's never been just me, man. And there was a time where I was the only one that did the streams, and I did develop it and set a tone. If anything, I did was say, okay, come with honor if you're going to be on here. You can be funny and stuff, but like this is a place of respect. This isn't a place to ankle bite or anything like that. And bring value. You know what I'm saying? Be authentic to yourself, and everything else has just kind of overflowed from that. So, I mean, that was just kind of my little thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I mean, it's a great thing that you got going here. I appreciate you like having me on and talking with you. It's good talking to you whenever, but
yeah, for sure.
I appreciate you having me on here and talking with the Bears.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely, if you're ready to wind down, we can. But one thing I thought about, and this is one thing I want to start doing with people, especially that have been around for a little while. Is there any thoughts, any kind of takeaways or stuff from just the adventure of the last couple of years that stick out to you? Or like, I don't know, any funny moments or anything that you just wanted to like reflect on or acknowledge?
Man, yeah, I mean, I think one of the I talked about this a bit in the article, but it's like, and I forgot about it until like I read it again. I was a little nervous to read it because, but I was like, it was back in the first little while of the Bears, whenever it was like before there was all these gamma hives and stuff. Like one of the first things they did was form a Discord. Mm-hmm. And we go in there and talk with one another, and they'd like haze each other and stuff. Like you had to say one embarrassing thing about yourself, I think, and then tell a joke. And, it was just like, and it was fun. It was like silly, lighthearted stuff. But then it came to a point where it was like people like wanted to like have Bible studies, so we like had like Bible studies and Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists would all show up and we'd all talk with one another because people were just very like kind of battered by the culture war, you know, just kind of,
Yeah.
and then finally, I mean, because there was like definitely bravado in there and some characters, but like you could tell like when certain things came up, people were very shy, reserved, and didn't know exactly how to talk about it. And then somebody pointed out, he's like, everybody, he's like, people right now in here sound like abuse victims. Like they're all apologetic and kind of like not sure about how they're talking. You know, like they didn't want to hurt anybody's feel. Like, and so you just like saw like how just the effect that the culture had, even amongst like-minded people, still afraid to speak, and that's changed it a lot. But I mean, it was back in like 2017, I think, and it just is like. And I just so like kind of thinking about that and like and how far like a lot of people have come. But it's funny though, like Owen was recently on that one show, that lady's show. I can't remember her name, but I watched it and I was like checking out some of the comments. Oh, in the live chat, and like I saw there's a couple of old bears that used to talk on Discord in there, and I was like, and they were like kind of like talking trash about Owen, but it's funny to watch their tune change a little bit. When he's like clearly just a cool guy, you know, just as like chill, having fun. Like he's like, oh yeah, I guess you weren't all that bad. It was like, but he's like talking. They're talking like all this shit, like trying to like preserve themselves in the trash they were talking. And I was like, hey dude, what's up? It's been a long time. Like I wasn't real active in the chat because I you know, and he like wouldn't acknowledge me until like I was like, but I've like talked to this guy like we are, you know, and it just was weird. It was like so weird because it was like you could tell like he hadn't seen anything like he had a bear name or you know and everything. And there's a couple of them in there. It was weird to see him, but it just is like I think he might have been even the one to say that. Line. See, this is where I was like, I kind of like just like lost in my own thoughts right now. But
no, I'm following you.
It was just interesting because I think you might have been the guy to actually say that. But he like, and then he finally did say something to me, and then it was like, it was just weird. He was kind of defensive, and I just was like, all right, well, it's good to see you anyways. You know, it's just like, it's been a while. And it's just, it's just weird to see how people can like, be like, oh, he's such a piece of trash. You know, like look at him like on his like you know he has like a huge family now. He's like homesteading. It's pretty cool. It was always funny, you know. But people are just like, no, he's just a piece of shit. I'm just like, all right, that's cool. I get it.
It's so strange, man. And this is something I've thought about, and you know, it's kind of even become more clear lately. But you know, a lot of the things and how Owen responded to everything that's happened was out of defense. You know, he was just somebody that's always been likable. He's always tried to get along with people, you know, not compromise who he is or anything, but like he's a likable guy. And then for standing up for kids, which is legitimately noble, he gets destroyed by everybody and anybody that all these people are definitely not on a higher moral ground. And so, you know, and then it was like a dog pile of everybody and anybody that just wanted somebody to hate. And like, you know, so, and he's worked through it. And we've seen in real time of him just being able to work through all of that and say, that doesn't define me. It's not who I am. Like, they don't get to say who I am. And I write my history from now on, and I'm moving forward. And you do see, like, I've seen him grow so much as a person in the last year or so, year and a half, whatever it may be. And like really be earnest with himself, you know, self-reflecting, saying, okay, like what can I do to work to do better, and really trying to be a good leader. He's like, okay, I didn't really sign up for this, but it worked out this way, so I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And you know, so it's so cool to see like just the community growing, him, and just the direction everything's headed. And I mean, that's, you know, the comedy has always been part of it for me, and that really drew me into the community. But more than anything, it was a desire for authenticity. whatever that looked like, like I'm not going to hate you for being yourself, even if we disagree or whatever. Like, and that's a blanket statement to anybody. Like, as long as you're, if you walk in honor, if you can be yourself, I can be myself, I can find a common ground for us to
Mm-hmm.
relate and connect. And so,
Yeah, it's like people like, and I noticed this early, like, as I was thinking about, it made me laugh. So when you said it reminded me of like when he started going off on like tangents about like the moon landing. I mean, you remember Artling?
it sounds familiar.
He was like the one of the original Bears that did like he does really good art. He did a lot of artwork for the Bears early on, and that was like professional grade stuff. And I think he even went to Owen's house a few times. But it's like when Owen started going this moon landing stuff, I just remember him, and he hadn't popped up like in a while, and like he just popped up in the chat, and he just was like, all he said was, "I can't." And it was so dramatic. He's just like,
I can't even.
Yeah, just was like, I was just like, dude, well, he's just being straight up. I'm like, Joe Rogan, all these comedians are conspiracy theorists. That was what was so weird about it. I was just like, dude, Joe Rogan didn't believe in the moon landing. Nobody cared about him. Yeah, Hartling. Yeah, God bless him. I think he's kind of did some bitchy stuff, but whatever. I get it. It just is like, it just was funny because you see people like they look at these people like these public figures, and they're like, no, but he's like my Pokemon, and he does what I say. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like they use these like, it's just so funny like the way they use like it's like no, he can't say that, he can't think that because I have to align. He has to align with me. It's like that's not the way this works.
Right.
He's gonna have his own damn thoughts, and if you want to have your own thoughts, then you go start a podcast and good luck. But it's like really the vibe of honesty that like I dug the whole time. I was like, well, he's not. And then people are like, it just is so weird to watch people over the years, like the different reasons they got angry.
They're sacred cows, yeah.
Yeah, it just was like, it was either like, yeah, like a sacred cow of some sort, or it was like, oh, he's lying because I can't believe that anybody would ever tell the truth ever. It just was like, that's what I saw. And some people were just like, I saw somebody turn on him like that. He was like a mod. And just for no reason other than one thing, he convinced himself. I watched him convince himself on a live stream that Owen was lying. And I just watched him. I was just like, oh, well, it's just as like he just for no reason other than the fact that he can't trust turned on the guy and was like, then became this like his like a huge hater. I just was like, dude, you're such an idiot. Like, cause like, and it just is, it's like, it's just people, and it's like it was always the people who wanted a hardcore cult that called him a cult leader.
Right.
Because they're like, because it's all the people who are like, we have to align directly with me. It just is like, it's so, anyways, it's weird to watch. And a lot of it mirrored what happened in the church. And that's why it was so interesting and so cathartic for him to watch him be like, you're banned, you're, it's just like totally wrecking these people. And like with reckless abandon, just being like, you're gone, you're a piece of trash. And just was like, brilliant, just brilliant.
Yeah, and
I loved every second of it.
And what you hit on though, the guy convincing himself and then turning on him, and this is something like the enemy right now. We're in a groove, and a lot of people feel it. Where a lot of people are firing like on all cylinders, man. We're like creating, we're like producing, we're doing our thing, right? So the enemy wants to get us in division and distraction or whatever, and it's always the Watiko, it's the whisper of like whatever it may be. For different people, it may be different things. It may be like you're not appreciated for some people, or like, this is nonsense, or you know what I mean, or like that one dude, like it's lying, but it's always to isolate you. It's always to find somebody to demonize, and then for you to end up alone and angry. And so, like, I really encourage everybody, anybody listening to this after the fact or whatever, be careful of people whispering in your ear trying to cause division, and keep everything in the light. You know, like if you have a conflict with somebody, go to that person directly. Or if you need accountability, have somebody else that's a level head to bring into the equation. But like I don't want, and I feel this in the atmosphere. I'm glad you brought this up because it jarred my memory to talk about this. But you know, there seems to be like a common theme each year where there's like a wave of some nonsense or people causing division or whatever. And you know, like last year and all that, it was some goobers that like fires or whatever, different things. But there's like always somebody that does it, and it always tries to bring people that should not have left a part of it, you know. And then like your pride or shame or whatever keeps you in that place of isolation. But like really be aware of it in yourself or in other people or whatever. You see somebody getting off track, like not everybody's meant to go this course and not everybody's with the cause and all that. That's okay. But like unnecessary nonsense or people that you know you're supposed to be in your life, don't let the enemy cause unnecessary division or, you know, whatever. It all goes back to communication and like really keeping things in the light. So if you feel like you getting a whisper in your ear, talk about it to somebody that's going to tell you quit being retarded. Or if you see somebody that's got a whisper in the ear, like be like, snap out of it, bro.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this ain't it.
Yeah.
But I really, you know, it's good to get ahead of it and say, okay, you know, some people aren't going to be with it. Some people are going to fall off. Somebody's going to have sacred cows, whatever. That's fine. But to the ones that have been around for a while that bring value that you know are part of the equation, I don't want to lose any more good ones over nonsense either, though.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of crazy. It's like watching. Yeah. It's like watching somebody super solid. You know, it's funny. Like you talked about, like saying like, "Oh, this thus and such will never happen," and then it immediately happens.
Right.
I remember being like a kid and that happening to me, where somebody came up to me in the church and were like, "Did you hear like thus and such left the church?" And I was like, "No way!" Like, kind of blew my mind. I was like, "I can't believe they left." And I was like, well, you know, if like it was like I've seen a lot of people leave, but I'll tell you who's never leaving is I know that I named this family.
Right.
Dude, the next week they were gone. I was so broken. I was like, dude, what? I was like, oh man. So
Yeah.
that's why, like it's probably then when I learned my lesson to never say that again. It's like, damn it, dude.
Mental note to self. Well, dude, we almost going at 2 hours. I've enjoyed it. I'm down to talk a couple more minutes. If you have anything else, if you got any shout outs, anything else, I mean, you know, I just like people to feel like they left everything on the table as far as sharing what they wanted to get off their chest. So.
No, I see Michael's in here. Michael Foxall, what's up, dude? And there's been a couple other people pop in here that I know in my actual life, which is always funny when worlds intersect.
Worlds collide.
Yeah. I think my mom even popped in here at one point. I'm not sure if she's still here. Hey, Mom, if you're still watching. There's my shout outs.
That's awesome. Well, sweet. Does anybody have any other questions for him? I mean, I guess you've been a part of the equation since what? Literally the beginning of 2017.
I'm sorry. What was that?
You've been a part of the community since 2017, or was it before that?
Yeah, no, it was about that time. Like, yeah, like I think fall 2017, something like that.
Fall 2017. Awesome. Well, I know you've been around for a long time, and do you want to talk about? You may, I don't know, you can do it or not do it, but like this stuck out to me the other day, just a testament of Owen's character when you were talking about some stuff that happened with one of the streams and how everything went down, and that just Owen like had your back and stuff, and never even like made a thing about it. If you don't want to talk about it, I'm not going to go into detail. But I always not to like you ain't got to go in the ins and outs, but just how like he is a solid dude. He is a loyal
yeah,
dude.
for sure.
And
yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons I got his back, is because he's had my back when like he had like absolutely no reason to other than just like he was just being cool. Like, well, like, because there was some like, I remember like first off there was some infighting, and some dude started talking trash about me for no reason other than like I just disagreed with him, and Owen popped in and he started like being like, because this was like a fellow, like he was like a fan of his like podcast or whatever, and he was like, he just was like, he's like, I know Westside Bear, and he's like, if you don't like him, you must be a fag or something like that. I was just like, hell yeah, dude. I was like, Michael's like, you stand up for it. And and then there's the other time though when I completely accidentally subverted it. Like, is that what you're talking about? Like the Pittsburgh?
I mean, I wasn't going to put it out there unless you wanted to talk about it, but I mean that is intense. I mean, we all made mistakes. I wasn't trying to make you talk about it. Unless,
yeah, well,
honestly, it's funny. It sounds like something I would do unintentionally. So if that makes you feel any better.
Well, like, it was unintentional. Like I deliberately, I'll just say, it was on Twitter, and this guy was harassing the Bears, and he was from Pittsburgh, and it was like right before Owen's Pittsburgh show. Essentially, there was no reason to like. This guy had no grounds to stand on until I made some like offhand comment where it was like, and I didn't realize that the guy was a particular color, and I just was like, because it was like, it's so like, dude, it like spiraled so far out of control, and like, dude, Owen never like, I brought it up in a letter, like I wrote a letter that he read on stream. Yeah, he actually threw it away, and then I emailed it to him, but like, yeah, he just like, it was cool because like you just say like this, he didn't ever even, he mentioned that A Bear kind of messed things up, but like he didn't ever say it was me or nothing like that, and yeah, so it was like, okay, I was going to say something else, I can't remember, but it's like, it just was weird. It was like, oh crap, but
right. It's one of those moments. But I mean, but my whole point with that, I really didn't even try to.
I don't care really that much.
Yeah, it is, and I'm one of those jokers. Like after the moment, I'm like, dang, what did I do? Whenever I have a moment, but like my whole point with it was like he's loyal, and he was talking about that the other day, and that he didn't even skip a beat with it, and it didn't impact your relationship or anything. Like for sure, we know it wasn't intentional, but like, we all make mistakes, and that's what this community is founded on. Is like, we're gonna get over it. You may have a fight with a brother, or you may have stuff going on or whatever, but like, we got each other's back. And I mean, you guys didn't have a fight, but you know what I'm saying. Like, if you do, like, if you're going through something or whatever, like, just pursuing connection and communicating through it. And just, I mean, dude, I love that about this community. It's like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have different perspectives or, whatever. I mean, we went through like a gauntlet of different topics tonight, and it's like, we're working these ideas out, but we all have these different vantage points. And collectively, we see things clearly, but like apart, we just see like little patches and stuff. And that's where I love where everybody's headed, and where there's a good bit of bears that are on this same wavelength of, we're just like flowing, like we're just in a flow state together. And even where some of this stuff like you brought up and we've been talking about is kind of where my head's at as well. Like, where do these things fit, and where do we go from here? And like, does it even serve a purpose with some of it? You know what I mean? It's like, where's my grid and where am I headed? And that's where my head's been at a lot the last few weeks, is like, what's next? Like, where do we go from here? Like, we know where we came from, we know what we've overcame, and like, we've gotten some stability and some footing. I believe we're on the other side of a lot of this nonsense. But it's like, okay, so where do we go now? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
once you like we've been fighting for so long. It's like once you get to that place of you're not technically fighting, you're still contending for stuff, but like, what are you moving towards?
Yeah, I mean that's true because it's like that's even like something I struggled with in the church for a long time was that even amongst people who like had overcome a lot of the church abuse or like church whatever the silliness of the church, it's been so much time talking about that and how they overcame it, and I'm just like, well, okay, well, like that's great, but like what next? Like what you know what testimony will our children have? It's it's like it could, because it's like the whole like it's like I'm non-denominational. It's like, well, that's clearly a spell because all you're saying is like what you're not. Where it's like when it says like people say like, and I understand it, it's like people say nothing is impossible with Christ. I'm like, that's not what it says. It says all things are possible. It's like, why would you say like something so positive in such a negative way?
Right.
It's like Eeyore, it's like nothing is impossible, I guess. It just is like such a downer way, like nothing is impossible. It's like such a poor phrasing of all things are instead of nothing is impossible. It's like
it's a flip of the focus though, because
yeah.
nothing is impossible is still a negative. Like
Yeah.
all things are possible is a positive. It's
Right.
like where your vantage is from that the dynamic of the verse. But
yeah. Well, it's like a double negative, but that's like witchcraft, I think. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. Has anybody got any questions for him or anything? I guess we'll wind it. We're going right on 2 hours now. But I really enjoyed it, man. I always enjoy talking to you. It's good to see, some long time crushers. You definitely got some scars and stuff from the adventures
And
that
I
you
got
came.
some Bear street cred now, yeah.
Straight. Yeah, I mean, you definitely are an OG though, man. There's a lot of people that respect and look up to you for sure. So,
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. Well, sweet, man. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. We'll try to figure something out. I'm doing another one here in the next couple months or whatever. And I don't know. I think Psychic Pony and Finks is Tuesday. But you got any final thoughts? Anything else?
No. God bless y'all. That's it.
All right, man. Love you, dude. Everybody have a good night, man.
All right. Love you too, brother. Have a good one. See y'all.
Yeah.